Alright guys, welcome to the video. This is the Unit 3 remediation for symmetry. Hopefully you have the paper in front of you and you're checking your answers as you go. Please let me know any questions you have before you take your retake. When we talk about symmetry, there's two different types of symmetry. First, we have line symmetry, and that's just if I have a shape and I can take a line and fold it and make two equal parts, then it has line symmetry. The second type of symmetry is point symmetry, and that's when I can take a shape, and if I have a perfect square, and I put a point right in the middle, if I turn this shape, and I can turn it either direction, and I will eventually have the same exact shape facing that way, that's when they have point symmetry, is you rotated it and it looks identical to where you started. So, if we look at our first one, we want to know what kind of symmetry does this have. Now, if we talk about line symmetry is something you guys have been doing since you were little, and we want to know, does it have point and does it have line? Well, let's start with line. And if you can find one line of symmetry, automatically it has line symmetry. Well, if I take my pen and I draw a line from the top straight down, if I were to fold my paper along that line, it would make equal halves. So it automatically, yes, it does have line symmetry. So I'm going to get rid of choice A and C because it has to have line. There's at least one line. I'm not worried about how many, but there's one line, so it has line symmetry. Now, as far as point symmetry goes, we want to look, and I'm going to put a dot in the middle here. If I rotate my shape, is there a point that it will still look the same? Now, if I turn it just like that, or if I turn it again, like that, and again, there are multiple points of symmetry. It looks identical to where it started. But if you notice, my taskbar that started on the top of my page is now off to the side. Even though, from here, if I were to do the same thing I did earlier and draw a line down the middle, it's still two equal parts. So, because I found a way to rotate the shape and get the same exact shape out, this also has point symmetry. So this shape will have both point and line symmetry. One major thing to keep in mind, if you have a regular polygon, and it has to say the word regular, if you have a regular polygon, it will always have both point and line symmetry. Any regular polygon. If it is just a polygon and it does not say the word regular, you cannot assume that it has that. You have to actually find it out. Now, which of the following letters have point symmetry? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate each of them. And on the test, I know you can't pick up your Chromebook. I know you can't turn the screen. Draw it on your paper and try rotating it. If I rotate the letter Z, well, that looks like an N, but that looks like a Z. And if you notice, my taskbar is at the bottom. So, the letter Z does have point symmetry. If we look at the letter P, if I rotate it, well, not quite, backwards, sideways, and but that takes me back to the very beginning. We're not worried about 360, that's the original shape. P does not have point symmetry. If I go to letter D, again, that's just sideways. That's backwards, and although you can still tell it's a D, it's not perfect. So, the letter D, until we get back to 360, does not have point symmetry. You cannot say, well, I turned it all the way around. You have to find a degree between 0 and 360. If I take the letter S, if I rotate it, and that looks like a letter S, and if you notice, my bars are at my bottom. So that means I rotated it halfway, and it made the S. So that does have point symmetry. My last letter, letter H, again, we're going to rotate it until we find a way. And if you notice, that looks like an H. My bars are at the bottom, so the letter H does also have point symmetry. Please keep in mind, point symmetry, it can be any amount of degrees. These three letters specifically had 180 because we went around halfway. I'm not worried about the degree, but if you can find the same exact shape out when you turn it, it does have point symmetry. Now, if we look, how many lines of symmetry does this have? This is the same shape from earlier. We did say it did have line symmetry. The question now is, how many lines does it have? You have to keep in mind that it is as many times as you can fold the paper and still get equal halves out. In this case, we already know that we did one line there. Well, if I take this vertex and I go through, it matches. If I take this vertex and go through, and I messed that last one up. Now, I know there's a lot of lines on there, but you have to count how many are individual lines and how many are the same line just crossing the other side. So if I start here, I have one line. This is a second line, third line, fourth line, fifth line, sixth line, 7, 8, and 9. If you notice this line, this goes back to my number 1, so we're not counting that again. That goes back to my number 2. This goes back to my number 3. This goes back to my number 4. This goes back to 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So, in this case, this specific shape has 9 lines of symmetry. But you cannot stop just when you find one line. Make sure you check all possible vertices, which are your points, and all possible sides. Make sure that you're drawing it, and if you need to, fold your paper. Draw the shape and fold it. See if you can find a line of symmetry. Please bring your notes and any questions you have to the retake to make sure you ask ahead of time. Look forward to seeing you then.